The ballroom buzzed with energy, a mix of ambition and rivalry filling the air. This was the Creative Duos Competition, an annual event where competitors fused their skills to create breathtaking performances. The stakes were high: recognition, career-defining opportunities, and a coveted trophy that signified more than victory. It was proof of greatness. Amid the crowd, Lila Rivera adjusted her camera. She was a rising star in the world of videography, known for her emotionally charged films. Her sharp eye and unrelenting focus had earned her a reputation as a perfectionist. But this competition wasn't just about art for her. It was personal. Winning meant solidifying her name in an industry that often dismissed women like her as hobbyists. Failure? Not an option. Across the room, Jonas Keller laughed loudly, surrounded by his stunt crew. A magnetic performer, Jonas thrived on pushing boundaries. His gravity-defying stunts had made him a social media sensation, but he craved more: respect as an artist, not just a daredevil. The competition felt like his chance to prove himself. He spotted Lila glaring in his direction and couldn't resist flashing her a cocky grin. Her eyes narrowed, and Jonas chuckled. He loved a good challenge. Tension spiked when the judges announced an unexpected twist. Instead of competing solo, participants would be paired with their polar opposites. When Lila heard her name called alongside Jonas's, her stomach dropped. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered under her breath. Jonas swaggered over, clearly amused. "Looks like we're stuck together, partner. Try to keep up." Lila's lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't a playground, Keller. I don't work with chaos. And I don't work with control freaks," Jonas shot back. "Guess we'll both have to compromise." The spark of conflict between them was undeniable. Jonas thrived on risk while Lila valued precision. They were oil and water, and yet the judges had seen potential in their collision of styles. Their assignment? To create a wedding-themed performance that combined Jonas's stunts with Lila's storytelling. The tension grew as they held their first brainstorming session. Jonas sprawled lazily in his chair, tossing out outrageous ideas like a flaming obstacle course. Lila stood stiffly at the whiteboard, furiously scribbling notes and rejecting almost every suggestion. "Do you even know what a wedding is supposed to feel like?" she snapped. "Yeah, like a party where everyone's watching you pull off the impossible," Jonas quipped, leaning back with a grin. "Wrong. It's about connection, emotion, the beauty of commitment," Lila retorted. "Sounds boring," Jonas said, shrugging. "Let's set something on fire." Lila shot him a glare so sharp it could have sliced through steel. "If you burn this project to the ground, you're going down with it." Their arguments only fueled their competitive spirits, but beneath the barbs, there was an undeniable pull. Lila couldn't deny Jonas's charisma, and Jonas found himself impressed by Lila's unflinching dedication. Still, their clashing styles seemed like an insurmountable hurdle. The call to action just when it seemed they might never find common ground. A sudden twist forced their hand. During a practice session, one of the judges visited to evaluate their progress. The feedback was harsh. "This isn't working," the judge said bluntly. "There's no cohesion. If you two don't figure it out, you're out of the competition." The warning hung in the air like a guillotine. Jonas and Lila exchanged a rare look of agreement. Failure wasn't an option. Jonas broke the silence first. "Okay, truce. Let's start over." Lila hesitated but finally nodded. "Fine. But you listen to me this time. Only if you promise not to kill my vibe," Jonas said with a wink. That night, they worked late into the evening, sketching out a performance that blended their strengths. Jonas suggested a daring aerial entrance, while Lila framed it with a heartfelt story about two people overcoming obstacles to be together. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. For the first time, they saw glimpses of what they could achieve together, not just as competitors but as partners in something greater. The first rehearsal after the judge's warning was awkward, to say the least. Jonas arrived with his usual swagger, tossing a duffel bag onto the floor with a loud thud. Lila, already set up with her camera and storyboard sketches, didn't look up. She was meticulously adjusting the lighting, her focus unwavering. So, Miss Perfection, Jonas said, breaking the silence. What's today's agenda? More standing around. Lila exhaled sharply. We need to choreograph the opening sequence. Your aerial stunt has to synchronize with the emotional buildup. Emotional buildup? Jonas echoed, raising an eyebrow. I thought we were making a wedding scene, not a soap opera. Lila finally turned to him, her patience visibly fraying. Weddings are emotional, Jonas. They're about love, vulnerability, and hope. If we can't capture that, we'll fail. Jonas smirked, his playful bravado masking his discomfort with the idea of vulnerability. Fine. Let's see what you've got. Early stages of connection, their first attempts to merge their styles were disastrous. Jonas's stunts were explosive and unrefined, clashing with Lila's precise, deliberate storytelling. Every take felt like a tug of war, with Jonas improvising on the fly and Lila stopping him mid-move to adjust angles or timing. You're killing the momentum, Jonas complained after the third interrupted take. And you're ignoring the story, Lila shot back, her voice tinged with frustration. This isn't just about you showing off. Story's overrated, Jonas muttered, though his words lacked conviction. The tension between them simmered, but neither was willing to walk away. Beneath their clashes, they both recognized a spark, an intangible connection that neither fully understood yet. Lila found herself intrigued by Jonas's fearless creativity, while Jonas couldn't help but admire Lila's unwavering dedication to her vision. One evening, after an especially grueling session, Jonas lingered while Lila packed up her equipment. The rehearsal space, an old industrial loft, was dimly lit and quiet, save for the hum of the air conditioning. You really take this seriously, huh? Jonas said, leaning against a stack of mats. Lila paused, her hands still on her camera bag. Of course I do. Don't you? Jonas shrugged. Yeah, but not like you. It's like, you've got something to prove. Lila hesitated, then sighed.
Igesido.
I've spent my whole career trying to convince people I'm more than just a girl with a camera. This competition is my chance to show them. Jonas nodded, his usual teasing absent. I get that. People think stunts are just for thrill seekers. They don't see the art in it. Their shared frustrations bridged a small gap between them, and for the first time, the silence between them felt comfortable. Supporting characters the next day, Lila vented to her best friend, Amara, over coffee. Amara, a vibrant and outspoken artist, listened with a knowing smile. Sounds like you're warming up to him, Amara teased. Warming up to him? Lila scoffed. He's infuriating. He never listens. He's reckless, and you're talking about him a lot, Amara interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Face it, Lila. You like him. Lila flushed but shook her head. This is professional. That's it. Meanwhile, Jonas was dealing with his own dose of unsolicited advice. His stunt partner and longtime friend, Rico, cornered him during a training session. Admit it, Rico said, smirking as he balanced on a beam. You're into her. She's just my partner for this competition, Jonas insisted, though his tone lacked conviction.
Rico laughed.
Sure, man. That's why you haven't shut up about her for a week. Both Lila and Jonas brushed off their friend's comments, but the seed of possibility had been planted. Challenges arise as their performance began to take shape. New challenges emerged. The centerpiece of their routine was a daring aerial stunt in which Jonas would leap from a suspended platform and swing down toward Lila, who would capture the moment with a perfectly timed shot. The stunt required absolute precision and trust, two things they were still struggling to develop. During one rehearsal, Jonas hesitated at the last second, his swing faltering. He landed awkwardly, nearly twisting his ankle. Are you okay? Lila asked, her voice tinged with concern. Fine, Jonas grumbled, brushing himself off, but his frustration was palpable. Lila crossed her arms, studying him. You hesitated. I didn't hesitate, Jonas snapped. You did, Lila said matter-of-factly. Why? Jonas avoided her gaze. I don't know. Maybe because someone's been drilling perfection into my head. Lila frowned but didn't push further. She recognized the fear in his eyes, the same fear she'd battled when she first started filming. She knew what it felt like to question your instincts. Later that evening, Lila stayed behind to review footage while Jonas practiced alone. She watched as he attempted the stunt over and over, each time getting closer to nailing it but never quite succeeding. Her chest tightened. For all his bravado, Jonas was just as vulnerable as she was. The next morning, Lila surprised Jonas by arriving at the loft early. "I want to try something," she said, holding out her camera. Jonas looked at her warily. "What's the catch?"
No catch.
"I just want you to see yourself the way I see you." Reluctantly, Jonas agreed. Lila filmed as he practiced, capturing his movements in slow motion. When she showed him the footage, Jonas was struck by how graceful he looked. "I never realized," he began, trailing off. "That's because you're too busy trying to impress everyone," Lila said with a small smile. "But you don't need to. You're good, Jonas. You just have to believe it." It was a small moment, but it shifted something between them. For the first time, Jonas began to trust Lila, not just as a partner, but as someone who saw him for who he truly was. Symbolic moments, their rehearsals continued to improve, and with each passing day, their bond grew stronger. One afternoon, while scouting locations for their final shoot, they stumbled upon an abandoned chapel. The light streaming through the broken stained glass windows gave the space an ethereal quality. "This is perfect," Lila said, her voice soft with awe. Jonas looked around, his usual grin replaced by a rare expression of wonder. "Yeah, it is." As they explored the chapel, Jonas found an old locket lying amidst the debris. He dusted it off and handed it to Lila. "Found your next love story," he said with a wink. Inside the locket was a faded photograph of a couple. Lila's heart ached at the sight, and she slipped the locket around her neck. "Thank you," she said quietly. From that moment on, the locket became a symbol of their partnership, a reminder that beauty could be found even in the most unexpected places. The stage was set for the final performance, and the competition venue buzzed with anticipation. Rows of spectators filled the grand theater, their excited murmurs rising like waves. Backstage, Lila and Jonas stood in tense silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Months of work, arguments, and breakthroughs had led to this. But as the seconds ticked by, doubt crept into their minds. Lila adjusted the locket Jonas had given her, its weight grounding her in the chaos. She glanced at Jonas, who was pacing near the rigging setup, his usual confidence replaced by a restless energy. "Jonas," she called softly, but he didn't respond. She stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. "Hey, you okay?" He stopped pacing but didn't meet her gaze. "What if I mess this up?" he muttered. Lila blinked, startled by his uncharacteristic vulnerability. "You've done the stunt 100 times. Not like this," Jonas said, shaking his head. "Not with everyone watching. Not with—" he hesitated, then sighed. "Not with you counting on me." The admission hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Lila's heart clenched. For all his bravado, Jonas was just as scared of failing as she was. "I trust you," she said firmly. "We've got this." But even as she said the words, her own doubts gnawed at her. The routine was ambitious, a blend of Jonas's most dangerous stunt yet and her most intricate storytelling. If either of them faltered, the performance would fall apart. Worse, Jonas could get hurt. The first trial, the performance began with a haunting melody, the sound of strings filling the theater as the lights dimmed. A projection of Lila's footage lit up the backdrop, showing a bride wandering through a ruined chapel, her gown trailing through the dust. On stage, Jonas appeared, dressed as the groom, leaping gracefully onto a raised platform. The audience gasped as he launched into his first stunt, flipping through the air before landing in perfect sync with the music. Lila, stationed off stage with her camera, captured every move, her heart pounding in time with the beat. So far, everything was going according to plan. But then came the aerial swing, the centerpiece of their routine and the most dangerous part. Jonas had to leap from a platform, grab onto a swinging rope, and glide across the stage toward Lila, who would capture the moment in a sweeping, cinematic shot. The timing had to be perfect. A fraction of a second off, and Jonas could miss the rope or crash into the set. As Jonas climbed the platform, a bead of sweat trickled down his temple. He glanced at Lila, who gave him a small nod. "You can do this," her expression seemed to say. The music swelled, and Jonas jumped. For a heart-stopping moment, everything went wrong. His fingers slipped as he grabbed the rope, causing him to lose momentum. Instead of a smooth swing, he was hurtling toward the stage at an awkward angle. "Jonas!" Lila screamed, abandoning her camera as she ran forward. He managed to twist his body midair, landing in a crouch that sent shockwaves of pain through his knees. The audience let out a collective gasp, and Jonas's face twisted in frustration. Lila reached him just as he tried to stand, her heart pounding wildly. "Are you okay?" she whispered, her hands hovering over him. "I'm fine," Jonas hissed through clenched teeth, but his wince betrayed him. Lila's mind raced. The next part of their routine required Jonas to climb again, but she could see the strain in his movements. He wouldn't make it. "Jonas, we have to stop." "No." He cut her off, his voice firm. "We're finishing this." She stared at him, torn between admiration and fear. His determination was unshakable, but so was the risk. If he pushed too hard, he could hurt himself permanently. Yet, she knew how much this meant to him, how much it meant to both of them. This performance wasn't just about winning. It was a testament to everything they'd been through together. "All right," she said finally, her voice steady. "But we adjust. Follow my lead." The second trial, Lila rushed back to her camera, improvising a new sequence to compensate for Jonas's injury. The routine shifted on the fly, with Jonas performing grounded stunts that showcased his agility, while Lila's projections filled the stage with dreamlike visuals. The story took on a new tone, one of resilience and finding beauty in imperfection. As Jonas moved, Lila found herself seeing him in a new light. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by a raw determination that left her breathless. He wasn't just performing, he was bearing his soul. The audience was transfixed, their earlier gasps of shock replaced by murmurs of awe. Even the judges leaned forward in their seats, captivated by the unexpected turn of events. But the final challenge remained, the symbolic reunion between the bride and groom. Originally, Jonas was supposed to climb to a suspended platform and perform a daring dive, but his injury made that impossible. Lila had to think fast. She grabbed a handheld camera and stepped onto the stage, her movements deliberate and purposeful. The audience watched in stunned silence as she approached Jonas, their eyes locking. Without words, they fell into step, moving toward the center of the stage together. Jonas extended his hand, and Lila took it, lifting the camera to capture their intertwined fingers. The projection behind them shifted to show the bride and groom in the chapel, their love enduring despite the ruins around them. It wasn't the ending they had planned, but it was perfect. The revelation of feelings as the music faded and the lights dimmed. The theater erupted into applause. Lila and Jonas stood frozen in the moment, their hands still clasped. Tears prickled Lila's eyes, and she wasn't sure if they were from relief or something deeper. Jonas turned to her, his expression soft. "We did it." "No," Lila said, her voice trembling. "You did it. I just followed your lead." Jonas shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. "We led each other." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. For months they had fought, challenged, and inspired each other. Now, standing together on that stage, they both knew the truth. Their bond had grown into something far more profound than partnership. "I don't think I could have done this with anyone else," Jonas admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Lila swallowed hard, her heart pounding. "Neither could I." The moment stretched, electric and fragile. Then, slowly, Jonas leaned in and Lila met him halfway. Their lips brushed, and the applause seemed to grow louder, as if the audience could feel the significance of the moment. The aftermath backstage, as the reality of their performance sank in, Jonas sank onto a chair, wincing slightly. Lila knelt beside him, concern etched on her face. "You need to get that looked at," she said firmly. "Later," Jonas said with a grin. "Right now, I just want to enjoy this." Lila rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her smile. "You're impossible. And you love it," Jonas quipped. She didn't deny it. As they waited for the judge's decision, Jonas reached for her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. No matter the outcome, they had proven something far more important. Their love was real, and it was worth fighting for. Backstage, the air was thick with anticipation. The other competitors congratulated Lila and Jonas on their performance, but their minds were elsewhere. They sat side by side, Jonas's hand resting on his injured knee, Lila's camera still slung over her shoulder. "We really pulled that off," Jonas said, his voice low, as if speaking any louder might shatter the fragile calm. Lila smiled softly, though her eyes lingered on his leg. "You should have told me you were hurt." Jonas shrugged, the cocky grin she'd come to both love and hate creeping onto his face. "I couldn't let you carry the whole show. That's not how we work." Her chest tightened. "You didn't have to prove anything to me, Jonas." He turned to her, the humor melting from his expression. "I wasn't proving it to you. I was proving it with you." Before she could respond, a voice crackled over the loudspeaker, calling all competitors to the stage for the results. The tension returned in full force as Jonas and Lila made their way to the spotlight. The applause of the audience felt distant, like the hum of an approaching storm. The judges, seated at an ornate table beneath the glowing stage lights, rose to announce the winners. The head judge, a stoic woman with sharp features, stepped forward, holding a golden envelope. "This year's competition," she began, her voice echoing through the hushed theater, "has showcased extraordinary talent. But one performance stood out, not just for its technical mastery, but for its heart. The winners are..." Lila's breath caught. Jonas reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "Lila Rivera and Jonas Keller." The theater erupted into cheers. Lila stared at the judge, disbelief washing over her. Jonas let out a laugh of pure relief, pulling Lila into a tight embrace. "We did it," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. As they accepted their trophy, the head judge leaned in to speak to them privately. "You reminded us why we created this competition, to celebrate not just skill, but connection. You two are something special." Lila glanced at Jonas, her heart swelling. The trophy in her hand was heavy, but the weight of their journey felt far greater. They had achieved what had once seemed impossible, but more importantly, they had done it together. The aftermath, the weeks following their victory, were a whirlwind. Interviews, press appearances, and new opportunities flooded in. Lila's phone buzzed incessantly with inquiries about her next project, while Jonas was approached by major studios wanting to feature his stunts. Despite the chaos, they made time for each other. Their partnership wasn't just professional anymore. It was personal, and it felt as natural as breathing. They balanced each other in ways neither had expected. Jonas encouraged Lila to take risks, while Lila helped Jonas channel his energy into meaningful projects. One afternoon, they returned to the abandoned chapel where their performance had taken its visual inspiration. The sunlight streaming through the shattered stained glass windows painted the floor in vivid colors. "Feels like a lifetime ago," Jonas said, running a hand along one of the broken pews. "It does," Lila agreed, holding her camera at her side. She looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't been paired together?" Jonas smirked. "I'd probably still be flipping through fire hoops and calling it art. And you'd be stuck with someone who didn't know the first thing about risk." Lila laughed, but her smile turned reflective. "You taught me something, about letting go, about trusting someone else with my vision. And you taught me that chaos can have meaning," Jonas said, his voice unusually soft. "That it can be part of something bigger." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the locket they had found during their first visit. It had been cleaned and restored, its tarnished surface now gleaming. "I had it fixed," he said, placing it in her hand. "Seemed like it deserved a second chance. Like us." Lila stared at the locket, her throat tightening. She opened it, revealing the faded photograph of the couple inside. It was a reminder of their journey. Not perfect, but beautiful because of its flaws. "Thank you," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Jonas stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't deserve it." She smiled through her tears, pulling him into a kiss. In that moment, the broken chapel felt whole again. Months later, the creative duo's competition had become a distant but cherished memory, its impact echoing in every corner of Lila and Jonas's lives. The trophy sat in a modest spot on the shelf of their shared studio, surrounded by evidence of new adventures. Framed photographs, sketches of upcoming projects, and scattered props that hinted at the magic they were still creating together. On this particular day, Lila found herself behind her camera once more, but this time, she wasn't capturing a competition. She was filming Jonas as he rehearsed a new routine, a breathtaking blend of stunts and storytelling they had conceptualized together. The sunlight streaming through the studio windows illuminated his every movement, and Lila couldn't help but smile as she watched him soar. "Cut!" she called, lowering the camera. "That was perfect." Jonas landed with ease, his grin wide and mischievous. "Perfect? Coming from you? I should frame that." Lila rolled her eyes but laughed. "Don't get used to it." He walked over to her, sweat glistening on his brow, and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You know," he said, his voice soft, "I never thought I'd love this kind of work, the storytelling, the meaning behind it all. But now, I can't imagine doing it any other way." Lila's heart swelled. "And I never thought I'd be okay with so much chaos," she admitted. "But it turns out, I kind of like it." They shared a quiet moment, the weight of their shared journey settling over them like a warm blanket. What had started as a clash of worlds had evolved into a harmony neither of them could have predicted. Later that evening, they returned to the abandoned chapel that had inspired so much of their story. It had become a sanctuary of sorts, a place where they could reflect on how far they had come. The locket, now polished and gleaming, hung around Lila's neck, a constant reminder of the beauty in imperfection. As they sat on one of the crumbling pews, Jonas reached for Lila's hand. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't been paired up that day?" Lila chuckled. "All the time. I'd probably still be obsessing over perfect shots and missing out on the bigger picture. And I'd be doing flips into oblivion, calling it art," Jonas added with a grin. They both laughed, but the humor quickly gave way to something deeper. "You changed my life," Jonas said, his voice quiet but firm. "You showed me what it means to create something meaningful, not just flashy. And you taught me how to trust someone else with the things I care about." Lila felt her throat tighten, emotion threatening to spill over. "And you taught me that sometimes letting go of control is the best way to find it. You reminded me that art and life isn't just about perfection. It's about connection." Jonas squeezed her hand, his eyes shining with the same vulnerability that had drawn her to him in the first place. "You're my chaos and my calm, Lila. I can't imagine doing any of this without you." "And you're my risk," Lila replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "The best one I ever took." As the sun set, casting golden light through the fractured stained glass, they leaned into each other, their connection unspoken but undeniable. In that moment, the broken chapel felt whole again, not because it had been restored, but because it was filled with love. The moral: their journey reminds us that growth often comes from the most unexpected places. True connection isn't about finding someone who fits perfectly into your world. It's about finding someone who challenges you, inspires you, and makes you better. Lila and Jonas's story is a testament to the power of embracing imperfection and trusting in the chaos of life. They learned that vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's the foundation of love and creativity. By pushing each other to take risks and step outside their comfort zones, they discovered not only their own strengths, but also the beauty of partnership. As they stood together in the fading light of the chapel, they knew their story wasn't about the competition, the trophy, or even the performances. It was about the leap of faith they'd taken into their art, their dreams, and most importantly, into each other. And in that leap, they had found everything they were looking for.